The war room fell silent as another red marker appeared on the star map. That made 17 human colonies lost in 6 months. General Marcus Hendrick stared at the holographic display, his jaw tight with frustration. The Kashrix Empire was crushing humanity, and nothing he tried seemed to work. "Sir, we lost another battle cruiser at Titan Station," his aide reported quietly. "The shields couldn't hold against their energy weapons." Marcus slammed his fist on the table. 50 years of military service, and he'd never felt this helpless. The aliens had better technology, more ships, and endless soldiers. Every time humanity built a new weapon, the Kashrix built better armor. Every time they improved their shields, the enemy brought stronger guns. It was a race humanity couldn't win. "We need something different," Marcus said to his officers. "Something they won't expect." His team looked tired. They'd been losing for months now. Good soldiers were dying in battles they couldn't win. The Kashrix fought from far away with energy beams that could melt through ship hulls. Human weapons couldn't reach them before the shields absorbed the damage. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in his quarters, drinking coffee and thinking about Earth's history. Humans had always been the weaker species on their own planet. They didn't have claws or venom or thick armor. Yet somehow, they became the dominant species. How? He pulled up old military records from before space travel. Afghanistan, Vietnam, the World Wars. He read about soldiers who could hit targets from distances that seemed impossible. Snipers. Men and women who could wait for days, calculate wind and distance, and kill with one perfect shot. The Kashrix didn't use snipers. None of the alien species did. They all abandoned physical bullets thousands of years ago when they discovered energy weapons. They thought projectiles were primitive and weak. But what if that was their mistake? Marcus spent the whole night reading. The longest confirmed kill in human history was over 3,000 meters. One bullet, one target, one patient soldier who understood physics better than most scientists. The aliens had forgotten that sometimes the old way still worked out. By morning. He had a plan. It was crazy. It might not work, but it was different, and different was what humanity needed. "I want to find our best shooters," he told his staff the next day. "Send messages to every military base, every colony, every outpost. I want soldiers who can shoot from impossible distances. I want the patient ones, the calculating ones. I want snipers." His officers looked confused. "Sir, we don't really use snipers in space combat," one said carefully. "We're going to start," Marcus replied. The recruitment call went out across human space. Marcus expected maybe 100 responses from old veterans who still practiced the ancient skill. He got over 2,000. Apparently, humans still loved the challenge of long-range shooting. Even in an age of laser rifles and plasma cannons, on Mars, at the main testing facility, Corporal Sarah Chun stood in line with 300 other applicants. She was 24 years old, small and quiet, with dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail. The other candidates barely noticed her. Most of them were big men with military decorations covering their chests. They talked loudly about their service records and their confirmed kills. Sarah just waited quietly. She was used to being underestimated. Next. The testing officer called. Sarah stepped forward. The officer looked at her file and frowned. "You're from logistics? What's a supply clerk doing at a sniper trial?" "I'm a competitive shooter, sir," Sarah said calmly. 8-time solar system champion in extreme range category. The officer's eyebrow went up slightly. "Competitive shooting isn't combat, Corporal." "No, sir," Sarah agreed. "But physics is physics. A bullet doesn't care if the target is paper or enemy." The officer almost smiled. "All right. You get one shot. See that target?" He pointed to a small mark on a distant hillside. 2,800 meters. Hit it. Sarah walked to the firing line and examined the rifle they'd given her. It was a good weapon, well maintained. She checked the scope, tested the trigger pull, and loaded one round. Then she just stood there, staring at the target through her scope. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The officer got impatient. "Corporal, are you going to shoot or not?" "Calculating, sir," Sarah said, without looking away from her scope. "Mars gravity is different from Earth. Air is thinner. Wind patterns are complex here. I need to account for the Coriolis effect from planetary rotation. Temperature differential between ground and air. Scope parallax error. Rifle harmonics. Ammunition temperature. How long is this going to take?" "However long it takes to be certain, sir." 12 minutes after she'd taken position, Sarah's breathing slowed. Her finger touched the trigger. The whole firing range seemed to hold its breath. She exhaled halfway and squeezed dot the rifle kicked. The bullet traveled for almost 4 seconds, a tiny piece of metal flying across kilometers of Martian landscape. Through the spotting scope, the officer watched it slam into the exact center of the target. He turned to look at Sarah with new respect. That was a perfect shot, Corporal." "Thank you, sir." Sarah ejected the empty casing and made the rifle safe. "Will that be all?" Before the officer could answer, a voice came from behind them. "No, that won't be all." General Marcus Hendrick had been watching from the observation tower. He walked down to the firing line, studying Sarah with sharp eyes. He'd seen a lot of shooters that day. Good ones, experienced ones. But this young woman had something different. She didn't just shoot. She understood. "Corporal Chun," the general said, "how did you learn to calculate all those variables in your head?" "Practice, sir. I've been shooting since I was 12. My father taught me that every shot is a math problem. Solve the equation correctly, and the bullet goes where you want." Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. "How would you like to solve some very difficult math problems for me, Corporal?" "The kind where the equations shoot back?" Sarah met his eyes steadily. "I'd be honored, sir." "Good. Report to Ghost Unit Training Facility tomorrow at 0600. You're going to help me teach the galaxy something they've forgotten." "What's that, sir?" "That humans don't need the best technology to win. We just need to be smarter, more patient, and more precise than anyone else." The general looked back at the distant target with Sarah's bullet hole in its center. "I think you're going to show them exactly what that means." Sarah saluted. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to change the entire war. One impossible shot at a time. Ghost Unit's training facility was hidden in the mountains of Europa, one of Jupiter's frozen moons. Sarah arrived to find 46 other recruits already there. They were the best shooters humanity could find. Olympic champions, military veterans, hunters from dangerous colony worlds. Men and women who'd proven they could hit targets most people couldn't even see. Sarah was the youngest by 5 years. She was also the only one who'd never seen combat. "Look at this," one recruit muttered loud enough for Sarah to hear. "They sent us a logistics girl. Probably filled out forms really well." Sarah kept her face neutral and found a bunk. She was used to this. Let them underestimate her. Her rifle would do the talking. The training was brutal. 12 hours a day of shooting, calculating, and studying. They learned to account for gravity on different planets, how different atmospheres affected bullet trajectory, how to calculate wind speed by watching grass move kilometers away. They learned to be invisible, to wait without moving for days, to slow their heartbeat and breathing until they became part of the landscape. Sarah excelled. While others relied on computers to calculate their shots, she did the math in her head. While others practiced for hours, she took one shot and hit perfectly. The other recruits stopped making jokes. The instructors started using her as an example. 3 months into training, General Hendrik called them together. "We have a mission," he said, pulling up a hologram. "The planet Verdant Hope. The Kashyyyks took it 6 weeks ago. They've built a fortress here in the Central Valley. Intelligence says their regional command staff is there." The hologram showed a massive structure protected by layers of energy shields. It looked impossible to attack. Thousands of soldiers would die trying to assault it directly. Ghost Unit's job is to eliminate the command staff without a frontal assault, the general continued. You'll deploy to elevated positions around the valley. Your targets will be the officers. Make them afraid to show their faces. Make them understand that nowhere is safe. An alien observer stood up. Commander Vrith was from the Vryn species, allies to humanity, but clearly doubtful of this new strategy. He was tall and blue-skinned, with 4 eyes that could see across multiple spectrums. "General, with respect, my species has the finest warriors in this sector. Our best can make kills at 800 meters with plasma rifles. You're talking about shooting across kilometers with primitive projectiles, through shields designed to stop energy weapons. This is optimistic. The shields are designed for energy weapons," Marcus replied calmly. "Physical projectiles pass through with minimal deflection, and our best shooter can hit targets at 3,000 meters. We've tested it." Commander Vrith's 4 eyes blinked in disbelief. "Impossible. No species in galactic history has confirmed kills beyond 2,000 meters. The calculations alone would require advanced AI systems. Humans don't use AI for this," Marcus said. He gestured to Sarah. "Corporal Chun, tell the commander about your last qualification test." Sarah stood up, feeling dozens of eyes on her. "I hit a moving target at 3,200 meters, sir. Accounted for wind, rotation, gravity differential, and atmospheric density. Calculations took 14 minutes. Shot time was 5.7 seconds. Center mass hit." Commander Vrith stared at her. "You did these calculations yourself, in your head?" "Yes, sir. Why not use a computer?" Sarah thought about how to explain it. "Computers are fast, sir, but they only know what you program them to know. Every environment is different. Every shot has variables that weren't in the last shot. I can feel things a computer can't measure. The way wind shifts. The way temperature changes with altitude. A computer gives you an answer. Understanding gives you the right answer." The alien officer sat down slowly, processing this. His species had superior technology in almost everything, but they'd forgotten how to think without machines. Humans still remembered. The mission briefing continued. Each sniper would have a designated position. They'd infiltrate at night, set up their hides, and wait. When the targets appeared, they'd take synchronized shots to maximize confusion. Sarah studied the terrain maps obsessively. While other snipers chose positions between 2,000 and 3,000 meters from the fortress, she noticed something. There was a ridge on the far northern mountain, almost completely covered in native vegetation. It had a clear line of sight to the fortress command tower. It was 4,037 meters away. She ran the calculations over and over. The distance was extreme, even for her. The Verdant Hope had higher gravity than Earth, denser atmosphere, strong crosswinds in the valley. The fortress shields would create electromagnetic interference that would slightly deflect her bullet. She'd need to account for 34 different variables, but if she could make the shot, she'd be completely outside the enemy's sensor range. They'd never know where it came from. Sarah requested a private meeting with General Hendrik. In his office, she showed him her calculations. "Sir, I want to take the northern ridge position." He looked at the distance marker and shook his head. 4,000 meters, Corporal? That's beyond anything humanity has ever confirmed. There was a shot in Afghanistan, sir. 21st century, 3,540 meters. It's in the historical records. That was considered a miracle, Marcus said. And you want to exceed it by 500 meters? In combat? I can make the shot, sir. Sarah's voice was steady. The distance puts me outside their sensors. They'll never see it coming. And the target? She highlighted a figure in the intelligence photos. This is General Dex Carr. He's the strategist who crushed 12 of our colonies. If I can eliminate him, their command structure collapses. General Hendricks studied her for a long moment. This young woman was asking to attempt the impossible. If she failed, she'd be too far away to escape. If she succeeded, she'd change warfare forever. Why you? He asked quietly. There are more experienced shooters in Ghost Unit. Because I understand, sir. Not just the math, but the philosophy. My father used to say that shooting isn't about forcing the bullet to the target. It's about understanding all the forces acting on the bullet and working with them. Gravity isn't fighting me. Wind isn't my enemy. They're partners. I just need to speak their language. Marcus smiled slightly. Your father was a wise man. He was a physics teacher, sir, and a very patient hunter. The general made his decision. All right, Corporal, you get your position. But I'm putting a support team 1,000 meters behind you. If this goes wrong, I want you to have an extraction option. Thank you, sir. As Sarah left his office, Marcus called after her. Corporal, show them what humans can do. Sarah turned and saluted. Every shot, sir. That night, she couldn't sleep. She reviewed her calculations again and again. 4,037 meters. 6.4 second flight time. 34 variables. One shot. One chance to prove that humanity's patient. Calculating nature was more valuable than any alien technology. Tomorrow, she'd show the galaxy what happened when you gave a human a rifle, a target, and enough time to do the math. The recording played on every military network in the galaxy. Someone had captured Sarah's shot from a surveillance satellite, though they hadn't known they were doing it at the time. The footage showed the fortress, the shields glowing bright, General Dex Carr on the observation deck. Then, from a distance so far the shooter wasn't even in frame, the Kashrik's commander simply fell. Military analysts from a dozen species studied the video frame by frame. They calculated the distance, the environmental factors, the shield interference. The mathematics required were staggering. Most species needed their best computer systems to even understand what Sarah had done, let alone replicate it. The Kashrik's empire was shocked. They'd lost commanders before, but never like this. Never from a distance their sensors couldn't even detect. Never from an enemy who could calculate shot trajectories that their own AI systems couldn't predict. The psychological impact was devastating. Officers who'd felt safe behind shields in distance now understood that nowhere was beyond human reach. General Marcus Hendrick stood in the command center, watching the news feeds. Every major network was covering the story. They were calling it the impossible shot, the miracle kill, the strike that changed warfare. Sarah's face was on screens. Across human space, though she looked uncomfortable with the attention. Sir, we're receiving recruitment applications, his aide reported. Thousands of them. Every civilian shooter in human territory wants to join Ghost Unit. Marcus nodded. This was exactly what he'd hoped for. How many can we train? With our current facilities? Maybe another 200. Not enough, Marcus said. I want 3,000 snipers within 6 months. Build new training facilities. Find instructors. I want ghost units deployed to every front line. The aide looked stunned. Sir, that's an entire division of snipers. The Kashriks have thousands of ships and millions of soldiers, Marcus replied. We can't match that. But we can make sure every one of their commanders is looking over their shoulder, wondering if a human has them in a scope. Fear is a weapon too. Sarah was promoted to lieutenant 2 weeks later. Marcus personally pinned the rank insignia on her uniform in a ceremony attended by reporters from across human space. He also gave her a new assignment. "I need you to train the next generation," he told her quietly after the ceremony. "You understand this better than anyone. Not just the shooting, but the philosophy behind it. Teach them how humans hunt." Sarah accepted, though she would have preferred to stay in the field. But she understood the importance. Ghost Unit needed to grow, and that meant sharing what she knew. Her first class had 60 students. They came from everywhere: Earth, Mars, the colony worlds, even some space stations. They ranged from 18 to 50 years old. Some were experienced soldiers, some were competitive shooters, some were hunters who'd spend years tracking dangerous game on frontier planets. On the first day, Sarah stood in front of them in the lecture hall. She felt awkward. Teaching wasn't something she'd ever planned to do. But she thought about her father and how he taught her, and she understood what to say. "How many of you think this is about shooting?" she asked. Every hand went up. Sarah shook her head. "Sniping is about understanding. Physics, weather, biology, psychology. The shooting is the last and easiest part. If you've done everything else correctly, the shot is almost automatic." A student raised his hand. "Lieutenant, how do you calculate all those variables so fast?" "I don't," Sarah said. "I don't calculate fast. I calculate carefully. Speed doesn't matter if you have the patience to wait for certainty. Most species in the galaxy prioritize speed. Fast computers, fast weapons, fast decisions. But humans learned something different over 200,000 years of evolution." She pulled up a hologram showing early humans hunting across African plains. "Our ancestors weren't fast. They couldn't outrun prey. They couldn't overpower it, so they learned to be patient. They'd track an animal for days, waiting until it was exhausted, until the moment was perfect. That's what made us apex predators. Not strength or speed, but patience and understanding." An older student spoke up. "That's persistence hunting. I read about it." "Exactly," Sarah said. "Sniping is just persistence hunting with modern tools. You track your target. You understand the environment. You wait for the perfect moment. And then you execute with absolute precision. Every shot is a conversation with the universe. Gravity tells you where the bullet wants to fall. Wind tells you where it wants to drift. Temperature, humidity, rotation, all of them are speaking to you. Your job is to listen and understand." A Vrin observer sat in the back of the classroom. Commander Vrith had requested permission to attend Sarah's lectures. He'd been skeptical of human snipers, but after seeing Sarah's shot, he needed to understand. His species had superior technology in almost every field. Yet this young human had done something his best warriors couldn't imagine. "Lieutenant Chen," Commander Vrith spoke up, "my species has computational abilities far beyond humans. We can process calculations faster than your computers. Yet we cannot do what you do. Why?" Sarah thought carefully about her answer. She didn't want to offend the alien observer, but she needed to be honest. "Commander, you calculate faster, but we understand deeper. You can process numbers quickly, but we feel the environment. When I'm preparing a shot, I'm not just running equations. I'm watching how grass moves in the wind, how air shimmers with temperature changes, how birds fly differently at different altitudes. I'm feeling the rifle against my shoulder, listening to my heartbeat, sensing the moment when everything aligns. You can't program that into a computer. So it's intuition?" Commander Vrith asked. "Experience," Sarah corrected. "Intuition sounds like guessing. This is the opposite. It's knowing something so deeply that you don't have to think about it anymore. Like how you walk without calculating each step. You've done it so many times that your body just knows." The alien observer was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised everyone. Your species is terrifying. You fight with primitive weapons and outdated technology, yet you achieve results that our advanced systems cannot match. How? Sarah smiled slightly. Because we never forgot that sometimes the old ways work. Energy weapons are powerful, but they're predictable. Shields can stop them. Sensors can detect them. But a bullet? She held up a single round of ammunition. A bullet is just metal and physics. Ancient technology that still works perfectly because physics doesn't change. And humans are very, very good at understanding physics. The students began their practical training the next day. Sarah taught them to calculate in their heads, to read environmental conditions, to wait without moving for hours. She taught them that missing a shot because you rushed was worse than taking no shot at all. She taught them patience. News from the front lines kept coming. Ghost units were deploying across every battlefield. Kashrik's commanders were dying from distances they didn't think possible. Officers who used to stand confidently in the open now hid in bunkers. The aliens were adapting, building deeper fortifications, randomizing their movements, extending their sensor ranges. It didn't matter. Human snipers adapted faster. Sarah received reports of successful kills from her former classmates. A shot at 3,200 meters through a sandstorm. A hit at 2,900 meters on a moving target. A synchronized strike where 6 snipers eliminated an entire command staff simultaneously from different positions. The Kashrik's Empire was learning a harsh lesson. You couldn't out-evolve human adaptability. For every countermeasure they developed, humans found a countermeasure. Because while aliens relied on technology to solve problems, humans relied on the one thing that had kept them alive for millennia: the ability to think, adapt, and overcome. 6 months after Sarah's legendary shot, General Hendrick's goal was achieved. 3,000 trained snipers were deployed across the front lines. The war's momentum had completely shifted. The Kashrik's Empire, which had been crushing humanity with superior technology, was now fighting defensively. Sarah stood in front of her 10th graduating class, looking at 60 new snipers ready to deploy. She thought about her father's words. Every shot is a math problem. But it was more than that. Every shot was a conversation. Every bullet was humanity, saying, "We understand this universe better than you think." Remember, she told her students before they left for their assignments, you're not just shooters, you're hunters. You're mathematicians. You're philosophers of physics. And most importantly, you're human. That means you can wait longer, think deeper, and adapt faster than any species in this galaxy. Use that advantage. Make every shot count. They saluted and left, ready to show the Kashrik's Empire what patience and precision could accomplish. And somewhere in space, alien commanders looked nervously at open windows and wondered if a human had them in a scope. The insertion went perfectly. Ghost Unit landed in scattered locations across Verdant Hope's northern mountains under cover of darkness. Each sniper moved silently to their designated position, invisible in the night. By dawn, 47 shooters were in place, dug into the landscape like they'd always been part of it. Sarah's position was the farthest. She'd hiked for 6 hours through rough terrain, carrying her rifle, ammunition, and survival gear. The northern ridge was exactly as the map showed, covered in thick native vegetation with a clear view of the valley below. Perfect. She spent the first hour just observing. Through her scope, she could see the Kashrik's fortress in the distance. It looked tiny at this range, like a toy someone had placed in the valley. The shields glowed faintly, layers of energy protecting the structure from orbital bombardment. But shields didn't stop bullets. Not really. They were designed to absorb energy weapons, to disperse heat and electromagnetic pulses. A physical projectile would pass through with only minor deflection. The aliens had built their defenses around their own technology, and forgotten that. Sometimes simple solutions work best. Sarah began constructing her hide. She used local vegetation to create a concealed position that blended perfectly with the surroundings. She built it so carefully that someone could walk within 10 meters and never know she was there. This was the art her father had taught her: become part of the environment, not an intruder in it. With her position ready, she started taking environmental readings. Temperature at ground level, 18 degrees. Temperature at estimated bullet flight altitude, 12 degrees. Humidity, 62%. Barometric pressure, slightly higher than Earth standard. Wind speed at her position, 3 meters per second from the northwest. But that was just the beginning. Sarah needed to know the wind speed at every altitude her bullet would travel through. She watched birds flying in the distance, observed how clouds moved at different heights, studied how trees swayed in the valley below. Each observation gave her data. Each piece of data refined her calculations. She measured the distance using her laser rangefinder, 4,037.3 meters. She calculated the bullet drop, roughly 11.2 meters, accounting for Verdant Hope's higher gravity. She factored in the Coriolis effect from the planet's rotation, a rightward drift of approximately 40 centimeters at this distance. She estimated the wind drift based on her observations, another 70 centimeters, varying by altitude. Then there was the shield interference. The fortress had 4 overlapping energy barriers. Sarah had studied their specifications from captured Kashrik's technology. Each shield pulsed at a specific frequency, creating tiny fluctuations in electromagnetic fields. These fluctuations would push against her bullet, deflecting it microscopically. But the shields also had a weakness. The pulses weren't perfectly synchronized. There were brief moments, lasting less than 1/10 of a second, where the fluctuations canceled each other out. Sarah calculated when these moments would occur. She'd need to time her shot perfectly. 16 hours after she'd taken position, her radio crackled softly. It was General Hendrik on the command channel. All units, mission window opens in 60 minutes. Target should appear from morning briefing. Engage at will when opportunities present. Sarah didn't respond. Radio silence was critical now. She just waited, her eye pressed to her scope, watching the fortress command tower. One by one, other Ghost unit members began taking shots. She heard the distant cracks echoing across the valley as rifles fired from closer positions. Through her scope, she saw Kashrik's officers falling. The aliens scrambled, trying to understand where the attacks were coming from. Their sensors detected nothing. No energy signatures, no heat booms. Just officers dying from invisible threats. Alarms began blaring across the fortress. Shields intensified. Soldiers rushed to defensive positions. The Kashriks were panicking, and they still didn't understand what was happening. Then Sarah saw her target, General. Dexkar emerged onto the command tower observation deck. He was tall for a Kashrix, with dark purple armor that marked his high rank. Intelligence had identified him as the strategic genius behind humanity's recent defeats. He'd crushed 12 colonies through brilliant tactics and ruthless execution. He was considered untouchable, always protected by layers of security and technology. He stood on the observation deck, surrounded by 4 layers of shields over 4,000 meters from the nearest human position. He was trying to observe the battle, to understand what was attacking his fortress. He felt completely safe. Sarah's heartbeat slowed. This was the moment. 19 hours of waiting, years of training, and a lifetime of learning patience had led to this single instant. She ran through her final calculations one last time. Distance, 4,037.3 meters. Bullet drop, 11.23 meters. Wind drift, 71 centimeters left. Coriolis drift, 42 centimeters right. Temperature differential, 6 degrees. Humidity effect, minimal. Shield pulse cycle, 0.38 seconds. Until optimal window. Her breathing became perfectly controlled. In, out, in, out. She could feel her heartbeat in her fingertips. She waited for the space between beats, the moment of perfect stillness. The shield pulse cycle reached its optimal point. The electromagnetic fluctuations canceled out for 0.03 seconds. Sarah's finger squeezed the trigger in that exact instant. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. The bullet left the barrel at over 900 meters per second, spinning perfectly from the rifling. It traveled through the thin air, fighting gravity with every meter, pushed by wind, pulled by rotation, affected by temperature and pressure, and a dozen other forces. Sarah didn't move. Through her scope, she watched the bullet's path. She couldn't see the bullet itself, but she'd calculated its trajectory so precisely that she could almost track it in her mind. 6.4 seconds of flight time. The bullet passed through the first shield layer. The electromagnetic pulse tried to deflect it, but the timing was perfect. The fluctuation was at minimum. The bullet continued, barely affected. Second shield layer. Third. Fourth. The bullet threaded through them all, passing through the microscopic windows that Sarah's calculations had predicted. General Dexcar was raising his observation device to his eyes when the bullet struck him. It hit precisely where Sarah had aimed, center mass of his cerebral cortex equivalent. The Kashrik's general fell without a sound, dead before he hit the ground. Through her scope, Sarah watched the chaos that followed. Officers rushed to their fallen commander. Soldiers ran in confusion. The fortress's organization began to crumble. Without Dexter's strategic mind, they were just frightened soldiers facing an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Sarah slowly, carefully made her rifle safe. She didn't celebrate. This was war, not sport. But she allowed herself one moment of satisfaction. 4,037 meters. 34 variables. One shot. Perfect execution. Her radio crackled. All units, primary target eliminated. Extraction in 30 minutes. Ghost unit, mission complete. Sarah began breaking down her position, removing every trace of her presence. The fortress below was collapsing into chaos. Other Ghost unit members continued eliminating officers, but the battle was essentially over. Without leadership, the Kashrik's defense was falling apart. As she prepared to move out, Sarah took one last look through her scope at the observation deck where General Dexcar had fallen. That shot would be analyzed by military historians for centuries. The longest confirmed combat kill in human history. The shot that changed the war. But for Sarah, it was just math. Just physics. Just one human being patient enough to understand all the variables and skilled enough to execute perfectly. She packed up her rifle and began the long hike back to the extraction point, leaving behind a fortress in ruins and a galaxy that would never underestimate human snipers again. 2 years after Sarah's legendary 4,000-meter shot, the Kashrik's empire did something they'd never done before. They asked for peace talks. General Marcus Hendrick read the diplomatic message with careful optimism. The war wasn't over, but it had changed dramatically. Humanity wasn't winning through superior firepower or advanced technology. They were winning through patience and precision. The Kashriks had lost 143 senior commanders to human snipers. Their officer corps was paralyzed by fear. Generals who used to lead from the front now hid in bunkers. Admirals refused to appear on observation decks. The psychological damage was devastating. The peace summit was scheduled to take place at Concordia Station, a neutral diplomatic facility in unclaimed space. Both sides would send delegations. Talks would begin in 3 weeks. Not everyone wanted peace. Hardliners on both sides saw this as surrender. The Kashrik's military council had members who wanted to fight until complete victory. The human colonial representatives had people who wanted revenge for lost worlds. The peace summit was fragile before it even began. Sarah, now a captain and head of Ghost Unit operations, was assigned to security for the human delegation. She didn't like it. Diplomatic protection was different from combat sniping. It meant staying close to politicians, dealing with protocols, and being visible instead of invisible. But General Hendrik personally requested her. "I need someone I trust," he told her. "Someone who understands threats and can respond to them. You've saved countless lives by being patient and precise. I need that same approach protecting this summit." Sarah accepted. If the general thought this was important, it was important. Concordia Station was huge. It housed 30,000 beings from dozens of species. The station rotated to create artificial gravity, had multiple sectors for different atmospheric requirements, and enough meeting rooms to host hundreds of simultaneous negotiations. It was built to be neutral ground, a place where even enemies could talk safely. Sarah arrived 3 days early with her security team. She studied the station's layout, identified potential threats, established secure zones. Her sniper training made her see everything differently. Every corridor was a potential firing lane. Every observation window was a vulnerability. Every crowd was a place where danger could hide. The Kashrik's delegation arrived 2 days before the summit. Sarah watched from the security center as their ships docked. She saw their guards, their diplomats, their support staff. They looked nervous. These aliens had been fighting humanity for 3 years and losing ground despite their technological advantages. They were here because they had to be, not because they wanted to be. The day before talks were scheduled to begin, Sarah's threat detection system flagged something unusual. A cargo shipment delivered to the station's lower maintenance section. The manifest said it was spare parts for life support systems. But the mass readings didn't match the manifest. Something was wrong. Sarah assembled her security team. "I want that cargo inspected. Full scan, physical check, everything." They found it 4 hours later. Hidden inside what looked like normal equipment was an antimatter device. Someone had smuggled a bomb onto Concordia Station. The timer was set for 14 hours. Right when the peace talks would begin, Sarah stared at the device through the inspection camera. It was sophisticated, military grade. The antimatter containment was shielded against detection. The trigger mechanism was redundant, with multiple backups. Whoever built this knew what they were doing. "Can we disarm it?" she asked the demolition expert. He shook his head. "Not safely. It's got tamper protections. If we try to physically access it, it detonates. If we try to disrupt the timer, it detonates. If we try to move it, it detonates. This thing is designed to be unstoppable once it's activated." "What about evacuating the station? Antimatter blast this size?" "The explosion radius is larger than the station's emergency flight range. Anyone on Concordia when this goes off is dead. All 30,000 of us." Sarah felt cold. This wasn't combat. This was murder on a massive scale. Whoever planted this didn't care about peace or war. They just wanted everyone dead. General Hendrik was informed immediately. He arrived at the security center looking older than Sarah had ever seen him. "Options?" he asked quietly. The demolition expert explained the situation. Every attempt to disarm would trigger detonation. Evacuation was impossible. The blast would kill everyone and destroy any chance of peace. The war would escalate beyond control. Millions more would die. Sarah studied the device through multiple camera angles. The trigger mechanism was deep inside the shielded housing. The only vulnerable part was the power coupling that fed the timer. It was 4.7 centimeters across, buried 17 walls deep in the station's superstructure. 2,847 meters from the nearest position she could possibly shoot from. She ran calculations in her head. Zero gravity complicated everything. The station's rotation would affect bullet trajectory. Life support vibrations would create micro-movements. She'd need to shoot through 17 different wall materials, each with different densities. The bullet would deflect slightly with each wall it passed through. "I can destroy the power coupling," Sarah said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. The demolition expert shook his head. "Captain, that's a 4-centimeter target through 17 walls at almost 3 kilometers. In a rotating space station, the tolerances are microscopic. Miss by a centimeter, and you either don't hit the coupling or you hit the antimatter containment. Both options kill everyone." "I know," Sarah said, "but it's the only option we have." General Hendrik studied her face. "Sarah, this isn't like Verdant Hope. You had time to prepare that shot. Hours of observation, environmental readings, patient calculation. You have what? 8 hours before this thing explodes?" 7 hours and 42 minutes, sir," Sarah corrected. "I'll need 6 hours to calculate. That leaves time for setup and execution. And if you miss?" "Then I miss," Sarah said simply. "But if I don't try, we're dead anyway. Along with 30,000 other people, and any chance of ending this war peacefully." The room was silent. Everyone understood what she was saying. This was the most difficult shot anyone had ever attempted. The consequences of failure were absolute. But doing nothing guaranteed death. General Hendrik made his decision. "Do it. Everyone else, continue evacuation procedures. If Captain Chun's shot doesn't work, I want as many people in escape pods as possible, even if they can't get far enough. Maybe some will survive." Sarah saluted and left immediately. She had less than 8 hours to do the impossible. She found a maintenance corridor that gave her the clearest line of sight to the device's location. Not a perfect position, but the best available. She set up her rifle, the same one she'd used on Verdant Hope. It felt familiar in her hands, like an old friend. Then she began calculating. The station rotated at 0.3 revolutions per minute. That created a predictable but complex movement pattern. The life support systems vibrated at multiple frequencies. She could feel them through the floor. The bullet would pass through 17 walls, 8 titanium alloy, 4 composite carbon, 3 steel, 2 ceramic. Each would deflect the bullet slightly. Each deflection was predictable if she understood the angles and materials. She pulled up station schematics and studied the internal structure. She calculated the density of each wall, the angle her bullet would strike, the expected deflection. She measured the vibrations with portable sensors. She timed the rotation pattern until she could predict it perfectly. 4 hours into her calculations, she started to see the solution. There was a window, a moment when the rotation, vibration, and wall positions aligned. It happened once every 3.7 minutes. The window lasted 0.08 seconds. If she fired in that exact moment, her bullet would thread through the station structure and hit the power coupling. If she fired 0.1 seconds early or late, she'd miss. If her calculations were off by even 1 degree, she'd miss. If she didn't account for every single variable, 30,000 people would die. Sarah checked and rechecked her math. She ran the calculations from different angles. She looked for errors, for assumptions, for anything she might have missed. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Every shot is a conversation with physics. Listen carefully. 6 hours after she'd started, Sarah was certain. She understood the shot. Now she just had to execute it perfectly. General Hendrik arrived at her position. "Are you ready?" "Yes, sir." "Sarah, you don't have to do this. We can still try evacuation." "Evacuation won't save anyone, sir. The blast radius is too large." Sarah loaded a single round. "This is what I trained for. Not just the shooting, but understanding when one perfect shot is the only solution. She settled into position, her eye pressed to the scope. She couldn't see the target. It was buried deep in the station structure. But she could see the reference points she'd identified. She knew exactly where to aim. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. She waited for the rotation cycle, for the vibration pattern, for all the variables to align. The moment came. Sarah fired. The bullet traveled through the maintenance corridor, punched through the first wall, deflected slightly, passed through the second wall, deflected again.